lost control of my show.
Sorry, we're millennials.
I can't hear anything
Can't hear
over
you.
the
Your
phones.
PDF converted. Being.
All right, so Mike, did you want to come in for After Dark too? Talk technical.
Come on in. The water's fine.
Who all wants to be in for After Dark for BFR technical?
I will give my seat to somebody.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't mind.
You
I
can
would love
contribute
some
more
like food.
than I
I
can.
didn't eat breakfast.
Oh yeah, where's Kim Dog?
I'll sit here and
I'll
look
stay.
important.
I just said Kim Dog.
You
I'll put on my hood. I made this too tight, it won't fit over my head.
Holy moly.
I made my hood too tight.
We'll get you one. Jake, we need your mic.
Oh yeah,
sleepy.
absolutely.
What do I think I am?
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna go old school.
Welcome back.
Holy
Notebook.
what is this?
that?
Oh, let me switch over.
How,
Whoa.
Persistent memory storage.
Why are there so many layers?
It was so many layers.
What are those for?
what is this?
What kind of pencil do you use to? Wow. Can I write with this? Why is that?
It's Mike. Mike, do you need
Oh,
a
you're
mic
cool.
What?
Oh, you're look at this.
behind?
Look at how cool Vax
I'm like
is.
crashing
yeah.
hard. So
Oh,
Oh
I may
yeah.
not too often.
such a cool guy.
Come join. Oh,
This will
sorry.
never be downvoted on Reddit. Where's the buoy?
Freaking Reddit.
Wait, we don't need ease anymore, do we?
I can float around there.
Just like,
Does,
hey guys,
so,
every time we have a
yeah.
question, we'll just like, and you're like, I'm here. Yay! Let me think where to like tilt this.
Back here and you speak. Tim.
I'm gonna get
Okay.
some chocolate, but I will return.
So just go like this.
Actually, ours.
So hello. All right, because you don't have a microphone.
Oh.
Okay, wait. So let's like, I have an idea. I have an idea.
I'm pretty
What if I
loud.
clip this? I have an idea though.
You are pretty loud.
Or you're gonna like clip that on there and just like
And
move it
then
over
just
towards
hold
him?
the microphone.
Well,
Or you can
well,
even
back
hold
in
it.
my day.
Where were you on March 13th, 1492? I don't know why I thought of the year 1492.
Because 1492 is the year of the chrysalis.
All right.
So,
BFR.
BFR, technical
Go.
dangers.
now.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so what do you guys know about the BFR?
118 meters tall, 9 meters wide. That is how many feet? 300 and
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Whole bunch.
Whole,
a good enough of them. Times 3.3.
and
And then that's 29 and a half feet wide. Ooh, wow.
Wait, chocolate's holding my mic.
31
distracted, getting distracted.
methane-powered Raptor engines producing 55 kilonewtons of thrust on the first stage.
So crazy.
7 sea level engines on the upper stage.
Maybe.
For now,
Maybe sea
yeah,
level.
sea
Maybe,
level
maybe
for now.
not. Maybe.
Yeah, and it has these
Well-
air brakes as opposed to no wings, guys. No wings or fins. These are air brakes, basically.
They're
No,
legs.
they're wings.
They're landing legs.
Landing legs. Okay.
Actuating landing legs.
They're
that
wings
help
with
the
legs.
Camera
drag.
one's really good too.
I was gonna
have a
say this
microphone?
should be like the 2019 model of the BFR
Yeah,
because
well,
they've
exactly.
changed ever since. Like we have
Yeah.
the OG.
Which was the question he asked.
We had the ITS, which was like the 2017 BFR, and then
Yeah.
last year it became BFR, and it was the 2018 BFR. Now this year's is the 2019 BFR. Around this time next year, Elon's going to announce another. That's the 2020 BFR.
And it's just
Just like
constantly
cars. Okay,
evolving.
I
Yeah,
see.
it's just like
I
cars,
see.
except it's rockets because they're making the rockets to
Do you
be
not like it?
an everyday thing.
Are you
so.
allergic to almonds? You hate almonds? Do you want to spit it
Yeah,
back
you're
in?
absolutely right.
Like, go
And
spit it out.
something that I find really interesting is how they scaled down the diameter from 12 meters diameter to 9 meters diameter. It's still the same diameter, but they kind of alluded that the size would grow at some point when they do even more upgrades. So I wonder
Okay,
what
got
else
it.
they have planned for BFS and BFR in the future.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
who knows? I mean, and just the tooling for that has got to be just incredibly expensive and time-consuming to build.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I believe that we have an image of it somewhere, but
I don't know if Dada showed it during the show, but it's in there.
don't think
Actually,
that came
That's
up,
so cool.
but that's okay. But yeah, that thing is insane. That thing is
Do you think-
insane.
Sorry, what thing? The tooling machine? Mm-hmm. It's
The
crazy.
tooling machine.
It's
Okay.
a gigantic
that?
tool.
So
Okay.
it's such a big tool. Yeah, it's. What we have to remember is that will freeze the design for a little bit because you don't purchase one of these all the time. You purchase one of these, period.
Right.
And then that's going to pretty much that will set in that 9 meter diameter. Now, rumor has it it's like 25 meters long, I think, or something. So they'll have to composite them together.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So at least they can kind of change, say they develop more thrust out of the engines, eventually they can potentially make the vehicle taller and taller, until they get to that fineness ratio that they've probably found is the maximum with the vehicle. But yeah, this is the fact that they actually have tooling is saying that they're
It's a big deal.
somewhere.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
They're not. It's not just paper.
They're bending metal, as they say.
Yeah.
But also, the tooling on that costs single-digit millions.
Wow.
So it's a lot of money and effort. I know what it costs to build, that kind of tooling for the really, really big satellites. And yeah, it's single-digit millions just for the tooling itself. So it's a design you tend to freeze
Yeah.
early on because you don't want to have, and a lot of things, decision will drive a lot of the technology down the road. So you need to make it early and not let the engineers change things.
And a point that seems to be lost on a lot of people too is that they've been bending metal since before the first 2016 presentation. I mean, in that presentation, they showed us the tank, showed us a test of them blowing up the tank to put it at its maximum pressure. I mean, they've been building hardware since before this was even public.
Wow.
And, I just really wonder like how much progress that what level they're at that they haven't even shared with the public yet. It makes me wonder.
Well, there's got to be a lot, right? And they did show us, and how they showed at the press event the footage of the Raptor engine firing. But when was that really first out? That was a while ago.
That was last year. They showed that long 100-second long duration. Before they showed a 15-20-second duration burn at 2016 IAC.
Yeah.
So now they're getting to the point where they're doing 100-second burns, which is the duration of a burn to land on Mars. That's also the maximum period they can actually do a test fire at McGregor due to the tank size out there for now. So they physically can't burn
do longer
longer
than
than
that.
fuel they have.
Yeah, they
And
literally
I think,
drain
I
their
think
tank
the
that
video
quick.
they showed in this presentation is the same size as the previous Raptor tests, and those are actually subscale demonstrators of the Raptor rocket or Raptor engine for an Air Force contract. They're going to have an upper stage version on the Falcon 9 that's going to use that subscale Raptor engine before they actually scale it up to the size that they would use on the BFR.
Now I have something
Wow.
to say about this because I've talked to many people about this, and I like this casual, just eat chocolate while
This is
talking
great.
rockets. So
Yeah, unless you're someone who doesn't like chewing
Yeah.
sounds. Like chewing away from the mic.
The entire internet? Yeah.
Some people
like
enjoy
chewing
that,
sounds?
I don't know.
all right, so here's the deal.
I just don't know.
Subscale has been thrown around a lot,
Okay.
and it is a hot topic of debate. Subscale, from what I understand, is subscale turbo machinery first. Turbo pumps.
Okay.
Combustion chamber, physical size of the engine will maintain it'll be almost, I think, the same size as the Merlin engine. Like, indistinguishable, to the point where you could have a Merlin engine here, you could have a Raptor engine here, and unless you literally work on those two engines, you wouldn't be able to tell which one's which. And I think because that's how they scale up the turbo pump machinery in order to get to their eventual 300 bar chamber pressure.
Which is huge.
Which is insane. That'll be the highest that I know of, and I think they're already over 250, which makes it tied for number 2 or potentially number 1 already.
Wow.
Wow.
So if it hits the 300, then it'll be number 1.
And that would make it full scale. To my understanding, is
Okay.
the full scale of the chamber pressure and turbo pump machinery, and that is what they are currently working on.
Whoa.
There's lots
That's
of
so
chat
cool.
room questions, guys.
Oh, yes, there are.
Goodness.
Hang on, wait. What?
Oh, wait, one of them's about chocolate.
Smokey Doug first. You only get to eat a piece of chocolate if you answer a question or contribute a neat comment. Vogon says, I do not think Elon is going to go to Bremen IAC this year, but someone from SpaceX will, and I believe Hans something. I don't know who Hans is, but someone called Hans is going to IAC.
Something called Hans.
Maybe they're
Okay.
thinking of Hans from Tesla.
Unless
instead
I'm
of-
completely
means
wrong.
No, there's a Hans at SpaceX.
Oh yeah, Hans. Sorry.
He's been on NASA TV. You've seen him many of times.
He has his own room in
So
the
he's
front
going.
of SpaceX.
And then
No, he doesn't.
Shut this.
So Vogon, yes, there will be a presence at IAC. You can look up IAC2018.org. They have the programs where I looked that up.
Wait, Franz and Hans.
Yes.
Hans.
That's where I was getting confused. Because they both tie up at two of Elon's companies.
Americans.
And then Raj Luthra wants to
From
know,
I'm Hans. We are here to.
To me, that's
would
the
we
same name.
go with MZ?
MZ.
Yeah.
Let's just do MZ. I definitely think that's what he wants to be called anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Because he knows us
MZ.
dumb
I get it.
Americans can't pronounce his name right.
Yeah.
Did you guys go?
Hell yes.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, yeah. Oh, heck yeah.
You were saying earlier you
Yeah,
probably
there was
wouldn't
some in
wanna
the chat
go.
room.
I'm
Alexander,
going.
Co something who wanted to know definitely if you wanted to go. You
Yeah.
said earlier that you were scared of
Yeah,
space
that's
flight.
terrifying. Like,
I say this over and over. I'll get on that thing when it's flown 1,000 times and it's just a cruise ship hanging out with like nice like champagne bottles that you.
But if Miyazawa offers you a ride, you're seriously going to turn it down?
If it's flight 2 of a vehicle, yeah.
Oh,
Like
man.
2 or 3.
Yeah,
Well,
this is
Hey, so
this.
flight 2 is the best flight.
If there's a
Yes.
Dear Moon.
abort system and it's flight 2, yeah.
Dear Moon is not going to be the first flight of this
No.
system. Absolutely not. So I would even venture to guess it's not going to be the first flight of this system around the moon.
They said it wasn't. They said they were
yeah.
going to fly an unmanned vehicle test flight of it out around the moon.
Yeah,
back.
we're not doing
So-
Apollo 8. We don't have Soviets to beat. So
Yeah.
Ben wants to know why
with
we
bad CIA information.
Ben wants to know why we need an abort system. So, in
because
my opinion,
we're pessimists.
Explain to me the abort
Explain
system on
to
your
me.
airplane.
so early airplanes sure
Oh.
as hell could have used an abort system, in my opinion.
Oh,
If you were on an early airliner, yeah, I wanted a parachute and I wanted a crew capsule that could have detached and whee, because this thing is made out of now very primitive material, right? But now, of course, we've evolved an airplane to the point where it is, as we call airliner-like, reliable. But we're still in the early days of rocketry. We're dealing with carbon fiber. Carbon fiber scared the crap out of everyone when it blew up in a fueling procedure. If that vehicle didn't have an abort system on it, which is an extremely reliable rocket, we all consider the Falcon 9 to be an extremely reliable rocket, yet during a procedure that is known to, that hasn't had a problem fueling, in 50 years, there's still an explosion. I would want an abort system if I'm on that while it's fueling. There's still a lot of
So there currently is
potentially-
no abort system planned for the BFR? Oh.
airplanes absolutely do have abort systems. They have all the systems on board are redundant. They're redundant. In addition to that, there are 2 engines on every airplane. So that means you can lose an engine, and that singular engine can still handle keeping that airplane in the air. If you lose 2 engines, you can glide your aircraft at enough of a ratio that you should be able to find a place to land within a reasonable amount of time.
Everything you just said, not true of BFR. Or, by the way, most flying spacecraft today.
I know.
Most flying
Well-
spacecraft today and not true of BFR. And I wonder, though, about
No, it is
BFR.
true of BFR. It's absolutely true
No.
of BFR. It's true of BFR and it's true of most flying spacecraft today. You have multiple engine out capabilities.
We should probably mic him.
Yeah.
No, yeah, no.
Don't give him that power.
To rebuttal that, we're talking about engine out capabilities, all these things. What if there's a fuel leak and all of a sudden you have no RP-1 left in your vehicle? How is it going to land without parachutes or an abort system?
What if there's a fuel explosion on an airplane?
It glides.
We lose airplanes.
It glides. It's still a
We lose
functioning
airplanes
vehicle.
Too. Airplanes are not impervious. Every method of transportation has failures. So if you look at this and say this can have no failures, you can never have success.
We understand that
true.
there's obviously inherent risk that's going into everything, but your design work should at least attempt to minimize as much inherent risk as possible.
Sure.
So
Multiple
that's what we do with aircraft, right?
Multiple engine out failure.
So and then
Fully
we get
redundant
things like
systems?
2017 where there was no scheduled commercial airliner air crashes at all. So there were cargo aircraft that crashed and people died in that. There were chartered aircraft that people died and crashed in that. But me and you and other Joe Schmo jumping on it like Delta or something, that kind of a thing, there were no fatal crashes in 2017. And that's because aircraft are very mature in their design. There's been a very long history of aircraft and a lot of testing and understanding and things that have gone into it. And rocketry, especially in terms of like public carrying rocketry, is very much in its infancy. Right now, we're at the 1920s in aviation.
I get that, but what I'm saying is it is still fully redundant. It does still have fully engine out capabilities. Why do we need additional abort systems? Which, by the way, aren't useful for the entire duration of flight.
Well, I just
Yeah.
They're only useful for about 60 to 90 seconds. So why am I adding all that weight in
We have
BS?
full envelope
Well-
abort systems now that are useful for 90%. There's only small blackout periods where it's
But for
too
BFR
Not
shallow.
a craft of this size.
okay.
But for BFR, how would they do it? If they had a problem during launch, the new design that we have has 7 sea-level Raptor engines on it. And the first, during the test program, they're going to be doing short hops and then hopefully high atmospheric tests similar to the Grasshopper program of the Big Falcon spaceship.
Yep.
So if there is a problem during launch, those engines could be capable of pushing it away, a push or escape system from the Big Falcon rocket. But that might be the only stage of flight that it could have that type of abort.
Okay.
I think the crew capsule should be the pressure vessel. should have a detachable thing and Super Dracos lined all the way around it so that you have that immediate abort, at least initially, at least until we get 1,000 flights in, and then we're like, oh, we've had fantastic success. And
But
we
that abort system put hypergulfs right next to you. You've added another point of like danger in doing that.
Yeah, the level of complexity there is almost.
You just moved the danger from here to here.
You just give everyone parachutes.
I just
That's what I was thinking.
I
I'm
would
like,
like
why don't we
to-
just use a parachute?
I just want to ask out of just clarity because I was in doctor's stuff while this was all happening. During the presentation was it said no, we're not putting an abort system on the spacecraft, or was it just not mentioned?
I
It wasn't
asked, it
mentioned.
was not
Okay, it just wasn't mentioned.
No,
So
no.
maybe
But I asked.
maybe SpaceX has something they just don't have it
Oh,
yet.
I'm just playing devil's advocate, by the way. I actually legitimately
Right.
don't know if it has anything.
Well, if they're
I don't-
not
I don't
doing
know
it,
if
I hope
anyone
that
does at
They
this
should be
point.
doing what I was talking about.
Interesting.
I just think that I just personally
Tom,
think,
if you're watching,
well, for me, you know, the space shuttle, I hate to quote it as the vehicle that ruined this for everybody, but it kind of is, because it did it's supposed to fly like an airliner and have airliner-like reliability, and the vision of the future is that the space shuttle goes up to space, no big deal, you come back down, you're happy, period. And unfortunately, the reality just wasn't that. And it's not until you start flying hardware that you start to realize some of these risks that you didn't know existed until you've flown it 135 times and had 2 of them result in the loss of life. You know, 135 times still is not that much data overall compared to airliners. Airliners, 135 flights launched from one airport in LA County before I woke up, you know? I mean, the amount of data on that is just through the roof, and it would be a long, long, long time before we have anything like that in the rocket world.
Yeah, a lot of the community is actually saying that, comparing it to aircraft, they're saying that it really just comes through a lot of experimentation over and over and over again. And there's, fly just landed on my face. That was random.
Fly tomorrow.
Fly up tomorrow. Actually, Rune12358 say, this is a little intense, but they say aircraft are safe because a lot of people have died in them in a very spectacular way. Since rockets are even more spectacular, we can expect them to improve safety faster, but there will be death. So yeah, that being said, I mean, I know there's a lot of rebuttal against having an abort system, but I do have to agree with this, and I'm kind of against you on this one, because I feel like it's going to come through a lot of experimentation, but by having an abort system, it can cause a lot of other problems. Someone else actually says in here, Neuropilot says, honestly, the biggest issue is keeping sufficient fuel for an abort if the main tank leaks or blows. So just to tie the community in here for a
You're
second,
just
but yeah.
trading one issue for another.
so
Yes,
I
precisely.
will always argue that there's an acceptable amount of risk. If I'm getting on a rocket, I understand that I'm strapping myself to essentially a controlled bomb, and that I should not be there if I'm going to be kidding myself that this is a safe thing to do.
Yeah.
But if you want to make rocketry a regular thing, if you want to make it an everyday thing like aircraft, you're going to have to figure out how to generate the safety for that. Let's just compare. If let's just say airline B is starting up and they get all their stuff together and they have a crash, and the crash kills everybody on board, and they're going to get investigated and everything with that. And then like 2 years later, airline B, they crash again and everybody dies on board. And then like 6 months later, airline B crashes and they kill everybody on board. Do you think that airline's going to keep going? I mean, it's just like the space shuttle. Every time there was an accident with the space shuttle, with Challenger and Columbia, congressionally, there was very little support for the program to continue. It was pretty much, everybody was like, no, it's over. We do not want this to continue anymore, but they decided to go with it because of certain things with that. So if you're going to be a private company, you really want to do everything you can to try to minimize as much risk as possible, because there is no way to spin dead astronauts as good PR.
No.
I think my verbiage, though, is not
That's
that
a
we
quote
should
for the show,
minimize
I think.
risk. My verbiage is, why are we so stuck on the idea of a launch abort system? That's a
I think it's-
Why,
that's a
Ben's
very
asking, why are we so
narrow
stuck on
way
the
of
idea of a
looking
launch abort system?
Say again?
I'm just quoting you.
He's repeating it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's historically what we've done, but is that what we need to do in the future to make these vehicles safe? Is that actually what we need to do in the future to make these vehicles safe? I don't legitimately know the answer to that, I'm just asking the question. Like, yeah, we're used to that, so we go to that. But is that where we should actually be going? There's no launch abort system for a freaking airplane other than it has one.
So you're other than the fact that it can still operate even if it fails. So to your point earlier, you said, with the Dragon capsule, for instance, the crew Dragon capsule will have hypergolics on board inside the pressure, or not inside the pressure vessel, but attached to the around the perimeter of the pressure vessel. Now, of course, that is a highly explosive material, pressurized, has its own set of potential issues. Extremely toxic, not to mention extremely toxic, and still rocket engines literally right outside of your face, basically, that in the event of abort have to light up and you're like, oh God, That being said, something like solid rocket boosters are still considered to be relatively safe, I guess.
They're great for launch abort.
They're great for launch abort. So, it's funny actually because both crew capsules currently that will be flying in exploration are using hypergolics.
Yep.
That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's ever been used for launch abort. And now it's being used on both.
Because both
out of three.
the Apollo, Soyuz, and Shenzhou all use solid rockets as their aborts. So you're right. This is the first time, and both of them are doing it.
Orion solids.
Yeah, and Orion solids as well.
Right.
Gemini's abort system was ejection seats.
Right, that's true. Well, that's still, I guess, that still counts as solids because they had explosive bolts to get them out of there, right?
Technically, even Mercury had a solid system as well. And Shuttle, in the first couple of flights, had ejection seats as well.
Yeah.
Although they definitely would not have done anything
Yeah,
because you
wouldn't
just basically
help.
were ejecting into the SRB plume.
One even same with the Gemini. That made no sense to me as an ejection system.
Well, I mean,
Maybe on the
if everything, I'm going to be honest, if everything's blowing up around me, I'm at least going to give it a shot.
See, what we really need is
What's the worst that can happen?
what we
You hit
really
the
need
ceiling,
is
I
instead of
think.
having an abort
Ooh.
system on the vehicle, we just need inflatable heat shields that can instantly
Yes.
wrap around
Like,
someone
like
and
that.
then
Like a
have
poncho.
your own
Airplane.
parachute.
They had that in the Speed Racer movie.
Yeah.
Right. Where they would just
No,
bubble up
I
around
think it was
them and
the
throw
B.
pilots out.
I want to say the B-57 Hustler lives like a Mach 2 supersonic nuclear bomber. They didn't have ejection seats. You'd like pull this thing and this clamshell would come down and then fire you out because obviously ejecting
going
at
so
Mach
fast
2
that-
not exactly ideal.
Yeah.
Again, maybe a good reason why not to
Not
eject from
biologically
shuttle.
friendly.
Right, right.
So yeah, whoops.
But yeah,
So,
maybe that's what we need is an abort system for each individual and not necessarily for the vehicle.
yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a
Escape
question I have,
pods.
though, to kind of change
Escape pods.
subjects.
Escape pods. Yes.
A big part of the plan for the BFR and going to Mars is the ability to refuel the vehicle and do docking and refueling in orbit.
Right. Yep.
And there was nothing mentioned about if there even is a docking port on this redesign. And maybe for this specific design, this is just for this lunar mission and there will be more upgrades later. But how do you think that they'll do it? With
gonna
this
ask
design?
No, they actually Elon Elon actually said that their capability is 100 metric tons to Mars with refueling.
So you mentioned.
So refueling, that's still part of the plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So people ask me about this because now you're looking at those fins that stick back quite a ways. Mm-hmm. They can just dock a 180-degree roll from each other, and now you have fins only every 60 degrees, not interfering with each other. No big deal. So I mean,
NBD.
NBD. I mean, I assume it's going to be almost exactly like what we saw in 2017, because the cool thing is there won't be a launch umbilical system. There's not going to be umbilicals plugged into the upper stage of the BFR to fuel it. They use those same connections for the booster to fuel up the upper stage. So that's going to be an inherent piece of BFR. So,
And it's all the same fuel. It's all LOX methane.
It's all LOX methane. So of course.
One of the nice things
in
about LOX
space-
methane is that it's all the same temperature. Liquid methane and liquid oxygen are basically all the same temperature. So that liquid hydrogen is much harder because it's much colder. It's like 75 centigrade colder or something.
Also, hydrogen wants to not be where you want it.
Hydrogen
is
does
so
not want to be
weird.
where you want it.
Liquid hydrogen is very strange. It tends to migrate around and seep through
Does it
everything.
do like superfluidity and things like that, or?
Yeah, it does very strange stuff.
And that thing
some
just
cool
burns
stuff.
cleaner anyway. I mean, it's going to be cleaning the tubing as it's going, so it's
physically
great.
making the rocket more pristine as it travels.
Yeah.
You're gonna love that.
Look, we don't even have to wash it beforehand. It's cleaning itself.
Oh, we're keeping that between ourselves. So, it was a good one. We'll tell you off of the air, I
Okay.
guess.
But I do have to
Okay.
say, though, back to that, though, I'm 99% sure there still will be those refueling ports and that will be able to be used in space for butt-to-butt docking. As I
Well, seeing about how much the BFR structure has evolved just from 2016, like you guys were saying, what do you think it's going to? Well, how much do you think it's really going to advance and evolve into after the moon trip and then going to Mars? Like, it's probably going to be so much different than it is for this one Dear Moon trip or multiple Dear Moon trips.
I don't think so.
Really, you think they're going to stick with the same design? You don't think it's going to evolve?
Yeah, you can just have a flotilla. I mean, you don't need to get a bigger rocket. Just send 5 BFSs for cargo.
Oh, interestingly,
So,
interestingly,
Yeah.
the amount of delta V that you need to do for a translunar
learned that
injection
yesterday.
is 3.1 meters per second, right?
Okay.
The amount of delta V that you need to escape the solar system is 3.18.
So you're almost.
So you're almost there. So the amount of thrust that you need in order to do a trans-Martian injection as opposed to a translunar injection is almost not any different.
But you have to raise your aphelion though. Still, right? Just because you escaped into your solar system, I think you still have to inject another 1,000 meters per second or something. Like there's still more to go. So you get up to Mars orbit compared to just similar to Earth orbit.
Not if you calculate your Hohmann transfer correctly.
Yes, I was about to say. We don't.
Do you live in Kerbal?
I mean, apohelion's the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who cares about perihelion? Because you're not going closer to the sun. We're not flying Parker Solar Probe. We're not putting a bunch of people in a BFS and then saying, okay, it's going to be like a solar. It's going to be like that solar hot dog cooker you made in 5th grade. Like we're not doing that.
What a trans-Martian injection is for delta V.
I don't think it's
your high tech.
I don't think it's much more. Honestly.
Non-volatile storage.
Actually, while
Thank you very
someone
much.
looks that up,
Non-volatile.
Escape trajectory.
It still can't handle water like this can. So,
this?
Yeah, that still has a problem with
It has
water.
to be higher than escape trajectory.
No, that's
I
not
don't-
true because
I
it's
don't-
written in ballpoint ink. Actually, it doesn't bleed.
And depending on your burn too, and even
always
with
write in
successful
ballpoint.
burns, I mean, with a lot of NASA missions, they'll still have course corrections along the way.
Sure.
They even showed that in the presentation. They're like planned course corrections just to do your,
Well, that's so they can
cislunar-
land back at the same spot.
That's true.
Well, it's also so that they can. You only get a free return trajectory without course correction, major course correction burns. That's going to take you 3 to 4 lunar diameters out. So if you want to really do the 200, your 200 meters or whatever it is, kilometers off the surface, kilometers, not meter, 200 kilometers off the surface of the moon, and do the very close pass, you actually have to slow down.
Yeah.
And then when you come back around, you actually have to speed back up. Is that right?
Otherwise, the moon's
back
gravity
up.
will just pull. Yeah, just.
Otherwise,
I mean, that makes
otherwise,
sense, yeah.
otherwise, the loop around the moon's really wide, and the landing. Actually, when you come back in from that low lunar bypass, then you're actually going too fast, and you'll come straight in. So you've actually got to burn, and so you can go around the Earth. I think we can link this video in the. For one of our patrons up tomorrow, a guy named Max Fagan, actually put a really nice video together he did with a freeware tool called GMAT, and talks about the actual orbits and shows you the calibrations of the orbits. It's really pretty interesting stuff.
So 3.1 is Mars or Moon. 3.18 is escape, and according to Zapfan, TMI, Mars, trans-Mars injection is 3.5 to 4K, 4 kilometers per second, depending on how good the opportunity is. So that's a little more.
It's more.
It's a little bit more. But I do want to back to
It's
the
interesting,
will
isn't
it
it?
change? Will it evolve?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
So here's the deal.
Yeah.
What we've seen so far is basically, I think originally 12 meters wide is what Elon still wants, because he even mentioned on Twitter like the next day that we still want 42 engines on it eventually. It should be that 12.
Oh my gosh, this guy.
42 engins. It's at 31
Well, I
right
guess
now,
if
right?
I had a couple
Yeah,
$1 billion,
31
I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah. So, but the
There's
thing,
nothing wrong with 42.
but the thing is they are having to somewhat freeze the design,
But what's the question?
Basically, it's good enough. This version to get out, they're not going to want to redesign it again just to do like this moon mission and then hope that Now we can get out to Mars. You know, like we'll have to redesign it again. No, they're gonna want it to be able to do everything from the get-go.
Yeah.
And it might not be
Okay.
optimized. It might not be vacuum optimized engines that are, you know, perfect for landing on the moon or whatever. That may come later, but I think that might come like 5, 10, 20 ships later. And I think they're going to do, you know, pretty much this will need to do everything off the get-go.
Do we need
Okay.
to use all of the delta V at Mars? Can't we use Mars's atmosphere to
Aerobraking.
aerobrake and
99%.
scrub
You
off?
can.
Scrub it off that way.
Velocity. Yep.
So, and then we could put a big. We could do it like 2010. Put a big inflatable thing in front of it and get more to slow
Well,
down.
that's why it's belly flop.
So-
And
Yes.
that's, yeah, that's the beauty of the redesign now is taking advantage of that, both for Mars and for Earth's
And for
atmosphere
Earth,
as
the,
well.
Nice.
the aero braking is vertical.
Yeah,
It just comes straight on. Not
That's so
unlike,
cool.
unlike.
Screaming it.
So it's unlike the lifting body of the space shuttle.
Fred
right?
Elon or
The-
Eagle.
the-
Sorry.
You heard it
Space
here
shuttle-
first. It comes in spread Elon.
Oh man.
Oh no. We're gonna stop.
I'm gonna turn very red right now if you don't mind. For
We need a
just a
color
second
correction
here.
on the cameras over here. So the space shuttle
So,
is
yeah,
a lifting
so,
body,
yeah.
and so it actually came in and at an angle.
41 degrees.
But 41. And so, but this is just basically a brick, really, with engines on it. So it's just really just coming inside.
Wow.
Was taking
so
advantage of that
Oh, man.
broadside fuselage.
I still love.
Yeah.
I love that. Like back in 2016, they were like, "We are never going to repeat the same mistakes that were made by vehicles in the past." Being aero surfaces on it and other things like that. And it's like, oh, look at what they're doing this year.
Those ailerons?
thing.
Everything they said they weren't going to do.
Physics
So-
always
No,
will
exactly
dictate
not.
design.
They are.
Right.
They aren't
Yeah,
air
yeah.
surfaces.
Physics
They
will
aren't?
always dictate
Nope.
the design.
They are not. They are just landing legs.
Really?
Yes.
They're not
Speaking
going
of
to.
the
They're not going to
legs.
do any
Nope.
sort of movement with them.
Wait.
Well,
Yes.
they'll
Well, that's
actuate. They're going to move on actuators.
They're going to move, but
Yes,
they're
but-
they're not really. They're not air. They're not like wings. Okay. They don't have lift.
They'll
Okay.
contribute
They're
a
just-
little bit to drag.
They're going to conform to
But yeah,
drag,
no
just so
lift.
that you can, because you don't want to have fins going forward in your vertical vehicle.
Right.
Right. That's,
Maybe
you
on
just
your
can't do
ship.
that.
But they will be used to maintain orientation.
I've watched
I
enough
think they'll
Star
actually,
Wars.
You know, to make sure that stays
Yeah.
correct.
Shapes
you know.
be damned.
Wait, how many
So they
legs are
just
there right
drag.
now?
So there's 3 fins.
3. Okay.
And so they're going to have
Okay.
2 of them are going to have to come back around in the in the forward back from the forward direction, and they will use them to keep the vehicle in a line.
Right.
The front fins are also actuated, so there are front and rear actuated fins. So that's the other
okay.
thing we saw was new was right. The front fins are new.
Yeah.
So there's
Are those
there's-
canards or
Whiskers.
fins?
They're air
they didn't
brakes.
say that they were canards,
They're
but
funards.
No,
Yeah.
Their animation labeled them as
wanna-
fins,
I want
so-
to set the language now
For
because Elon
cannons.
did a bad
No,
job
those
of
are
it. They are
dogs.
not wings. They are not fins. Think of them as air brakes.
Air brakes.
Literally,
Yeah, effectively,
imagine
they're air
that they're
brakes.
tucked up
That's
against-
cool.
And they deploy out to create more drag. They aren't made to
That's
create
sick.
any kind of angular lift
Oh.
or anything. They're there
Right,
to
right.
create drag. So think of them as air brakes.
Christopher Smith
Yeah.
said
If
on
you
YouTube
put a
makes a good
fins.
point. Canards
Yeah.
pitch,
Yeah.
so they're not
More
canards.
sense.
Yeah.
Good call.
If you
Yeah.
put
On
a
that
piece
note,
of
we're running out
plywood
of
into an
goldfish, so I feel like we
airstream,
should wrap
moving
this
at a fast rate,
Whatever.
Hold on, guys. Dada's making a good point.
Wait.
We need to do a show debrief too.
if you put a piece of plywood into an airstream at an angle, it's going to generate lift.
Yes,
unless it's vertical.
Okay.
you can literally make the capsules generated.
Angle of attack
Yes.
on a planar surface is going to
You're talking about
generate
creating
lift.
offset lift.
Not if it's 90 degrees.
Good luck.
That's what they're doing. It's
A
vertical.
planar surface.
Dada?
I can't repeat
His
it.
name is also Tim.
yeah, you're right.
Too many Tims.
I do want to see what happens though if they are going to stick with that 90-degree profile on reentry. So.
What's going to happen is going to be beautiful.
Is there an alternate
Well,
design
Tim
for
did a
6 legs?
Kerbal Space Program,
Trying it out, yeah.
version
Yeah.
of that, and
Well, I have a
that's
better
Space
version that
program,
I'm
yeah.
gonna, I have a better version that will actually do it automated with potentially little to no SAS and no like automatic.
Ooh.
Yeah, I figured it all out.
oh cool.
One reaction wheel or less.
Well, it worked on Kerbal.
Yeah, no reaction wheels. either.
No
way,
reaction
it works.
wheels.
That's how
All
we know it's
right.
real.
That's
I think
that's
it was
intense.
interesting that it was not that it worked in Kerbal and therefore it works in the real world, but that it was easy in Kerbal, and you basically were successful the first time you tried it.
Yeah.
And that
had a really
was
crappy
that
version.
was somewhat telling. I mean, obviously, Kerbal's not a real word simulator. Just because you think you can do it in
What?
Kerbal, yeah.
Are you sure?
I know.
Oh. Well, I
but the
saw
fact
on
that
Reddit
the fact that it's straightforward in Kerbal means that it's probably not quite that hard in the real world.
Yeah, that's what's so cool.
Yeah.
That's why that's a great game to educate
Here,
yourself
really
a
quick.
bit.
I see someone, Andy Law. Or wait, not. Someone said, "Why are they shaped like fins?" In Launchpad Astronomy. Here we go. Just to clarify, ready? The vehicle needs 3 fins. Like this.
Stability?
to be able to
Right?
land.
Downward dog.
To land. Yeah. So, to make them as wide as possible, you're gonna have them kind of anchored up here anyway. So why not think of it like a flying squirrel, where you stretch a skin between the landing leg and the vehicle?
Yeah.
And that's now
That's
an
a great-
free aerodynamic surface, basically. Think about the Falcon 9, how it lands, and those legs come out, and they're deploying actually against the direction of travel, so they could be used as an aero brake if it wasn't the most unstable thing you could ever do with a vehicle. So people always say, like, why don't they do that? This is what they're doing. They're using the landing legs,
Right.
and that's all going to be part of the structure to make it strong, basically having the skin attached all the way along, and so that's why they're shaped like fins, because it makes sense to do so.
And on the Falcon,
That
on the
was
Falcon 9
great.
first stage booster landing, it's only going what 5,000 miles an hour,
Yeah.
as opposed to 25,000 miles an hour,
Okay.
or faster if you're coming back from the moon.
That's
so
fast.
It's
not that
it's an
fast.
order of magnitude more energy. It's not 3 times as hard or 5 times as hard. It's 100.
10.
It's 10 to 100 times as
Yeah.
hard.
Holy
It
smokes.
goes up exponentially. It's really a big deal.
Yeah. So is the BFR like a flying squirrel? I think you mean flying squirrel? But
Yeah,
yes.
Flying squirrel.
Yes, Smasher.
Look,
Or
I have very large aero brakes attached to my body.
Flying foxes. Like
fox.
like a fox, but flying.
We call those bats.
Yeah.
Like we don't
I've
call
seen
it
those.
flying
Those
fox
get
man.
huge
Right?
too.
Right?
But they're
like-
so cute though.
They are also
They're
very
so cute though. Flying foxes. They're adorable and terrifying.
They're like
all at the same
Flying
time.
foxes.
Oh!
Foxes. Foxes.
they're like big
Foxes?
puppies that fly.
Are they making fun of your accent again?
Apparently, when I say
like-
flying foxes in Australian accent, it sounds like it's
Foxes.
Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry, internet.
Sorry, not sorry.
Lisa is sorry.
Oh, Lisa.
What about flying goats?
10 more minutes.
Okay.
10 more minutes?
You want 10 minutes?
Oh gosh. Let me go through the
Or
chat,
should we-
see if there's anything to ask. Okay.
I think we're wrapped.
I think
one of the
we're
other
good.
Boo.
Squirrels in space.
I guess we're done then.
Squirrels.
Squirrel.
What about a
Wait,
goat?
Vax, you did have something you wanted
So
to
there's,
say.
they did say that they were going to do a bunch of test launches before any human flight. So, and the other thing was that we should expect to see. Where did they say this?
So
Maybe the page through my memory.
short hops of BFS in 2019.
2019.
And
I
then
have a
high
bet
altitude tests of the
with you on
BFS in
that.
2020, as well as booster tests of the BFR in 2020, with hopefully the first uncrewed mission within 2 to 3 years from now.
Right.
So Max is
What are
actually
you doing in
watching.
3 years?
The Max that made the video.
Oh, hey, Max.
Oh.
Awesome.
Yay. Hello.
Wait, who did
Awesome.
what?
Oh, there was a
Space
video that you shared with us that Max made, talking really well about free return trajectories and how that works.
Yeah.
We'll check that out on the community forum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Community.tmro.tv.
By the way, I want to say this now. We should have said this at the very beginning. If someone happens to be watching this, if you guys end up posting this outside of like the Patreon exclusive thing, this is not.
This is
the-
always.
Gets posted outside of Patreon.
That's so. If you're happening to tune this in because you're seeing BFR and you're like, "What is this? This is not the This is just the casual conversation portion
Right.
of the show."
Yes.
Right.
So
It's
don't
separate.
judge the fact that I walked in having recently urinated and then had to spit chocolate out. Like that's not.
And that none of us made a big deal out of it.
I don't know what you're saying. That's pretty normal for us.
Pretty bad.
This is our normal show.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, that's why we didn't notice. So.
Space yoga.
Welcome to
happened.
After Dark.
If you expected
Welcome
more
to
polish
After
than
Dark.
that, I'm
Casual.
sorry.
Exactly.
We need Carrie to do that really cool voiceover of like, this is after dark or something.
Oh,
What she used to say.
yeah.
What she used to
The,
say.
the sultry intro.
Yeah, the sultry. We missed the sultry intro,
This is
Carrie
after
Ann.
dark.
I wasn't
You want to do it?
We know.
Sure, what? No.
We want you to do your old intro to After Dark again.
But it's not Space Big Fest anymore.
You're true.
I know. I want to hear it. Is it like, this is After Dark? Welcome.
Yeah, something
We have
like
goldfish.
No, I would never say those things.
It's on YouTube.
It was something
you can
along
find
those like, "Welcome to After Dark." It's
I'm gonna
always
Google
dark
this later.
somewhere.
Did it for everyone, and y'all ignored me.
Yeah.
So-
Oh,
Too
whoa.
late now.
All right.
Too late now.
One and done.
I love ignoring Ben.
Wait, there's a Ben here?
We'll see you later, guys.